Welcome to the Better Buildings, Better Society podcast. Twice a month, we interview interesting individuals and get insight into what they think makes building better members of society. Subscribe to our podcast and share with your friends. Hi, I'm Stephen Forster, founder and principal of DMA Engineering. My passion lies in the built environment and in the mechanical systems that keep buildings running at their optimum efficiency, while at the same time provide the best possible health and comfort to their occupants. In this way, DMA is absolutely committed to making buildings better members of society. This podcast focuses on energy efficiency through the eyes and experience of building industry professionals. Together with my guest, I will lead all of us on an exploration of how to build better energy efficiency buildings, how to save our clients time and money, and offer practical advice for those interested in the built environment. Join me, a mechanical engineer, outdoor enthusiast, and green advocate as I interview guests with leading edge ideas for creating better buildings and a better society. Hello again. I'm Stephen Forster, principal of DMA Engineering. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Better Buildings, Better Society. This week we have Christy Riggs, principal architect at 308. She is an expert in architectural and commercial and residential spaces and custom furniture. Christy offers an expertise in sustainability, design excellence, innovative thinking, and exceptional communication. We are excited to be hosting Christy and thrilled to explore more about how architecture can make buildings better members of society. With that, it is our privilege to welcome Christy to the show and learn more about what inspires her in this industry. Hello, Christy. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well.
So give us a little more background about the work you do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a Ball State University grad over from Indiana. So Colorado is not my native place of residence, but been here about 20 years. So it definitely is home at this point in time. I started 308 LLC about 11 years ago. And this is due mostly to the downturn in the economy after 2008. The firm I was at was greatly downsizing, but we had a few projects, and so I took those on as mostly custom single-family homes and nonprofit work at that point in time. But since then, we have grown. We're now doing 8+ story hospitality, multifamily, apartments, restaurants, offices, and still doing the custom single family as well. So our work is pretty diverse, and always with the focus of the nonprofit work. That's always kind of our go-to, the fun stuff, the part that means the most to us. So that's always happening as well. We are a small firm in Colorado Springs. What's going to you? Oh, I guess me personally, I'm a former AIA Colorado South president. I'm also on the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department board. I've served on the licensing board and now on the board of review, the advisory board, and the board of appeals, and also on the Colorado Springs Fire Board of Appeals, which deals with a lot of fire code and construction issues. So that's kind of where we're at. And so we do a little bit of everything, and just love that nonprofit work and giving back to the community.
That's great. So what's the biggest challenge facing your work right now?
My immediate challenge is finding staff. there's only so many architects out there, and especially ones that have the passion to do the type of work that we do. So that's always an ongoing challenge. And being in Colorado Springs, we're not quite as close to the larger architecture schools like Denver and Boulder. It's a little bit harder to draw the staff down here, but we do have some amazing talent here in this area. So getting those in without having to steal from our sister and partner firms that we try not to do that here. So getting them in has been a challenge. Other than that, keeping up with technology, I have found has been a little bit of an issue, especially for me. I've been doing this for 20 years, and so trying to constantly learn new things. It's a fun challenge to have, but you're also trying to run a firm at the same time. So keeping up with that is definitely something that we're constantly working on.
So as far as the staff is going, are you finding that is it just that there's not enough people graduating in architecture, related with the STEM, right? There's a shortage of those people going into that world. Are you finding that just to be across the board, we're just not graduating enough new architects?
Yeah, I would say it's a bit of that, and it's a bit of the passion to actually go into the profession, even with that degree. I think there's a lot of opportunities with architecture and engineering degrees that, there's different avenues you can go into that maybe aren't as demanding as what the typical architecture profession is. So just maintaining them within the field once they graduate, I think is an issue. But yeah, I think a number of universities, at least friends that I have, they were professors now, have seen a downturn in the number of people who are graduating. So yeah, it'd be great to see more people go into it and really re-engage and get them excited to go back into this field. Yeah.
And then with the technology, I hear you on the technology, right? And it's going to be a challenge forever, right? It's because it's just technology. It's just going to keep moving. So, yeah. So what might be the biggest challenge you'll face with your work in the next 3 to 5, 10 years?
I'm really hoping that we don't see a massive downturn that I think everyone is sort of fearing on the edge right now. But that aside, Colorado is still moving in the forward and increasing direction, at least for the immediate time being, for construction levels, which means we're all busy on the design side. From that, it's making sure we're doing the right thing moving forward. Are we engaging with the community, or are we just building the cheapest thing for the developer? So for me, I think it's really making sure our firm especially is focused on serving the community and engaging the community with what they need, rather than just building the next box to keep up with demand.
So, you made mention of the nonprofit work and then the engaging the community. Would you say that, is there a little bit of a mission base with 308 LLC?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really enjoy the nonprofit work, and that to us, that can be anything. That could be, we do work with Goodwill Industries. We do work with the Salvation Army. We're currently working on reconfiguring a shelter space to get as many beds as possible for families to have a place to go. That could be charity work. It could be churches, pretty much anyone that we feel is giving back to the community. That's going to be something that we always look to do. Obviously we need to work for the developers and you pay the bills too, but making sure those are the ones that we think have the biggest impact long term. And so those are the ones we actively go after.
Okay. So what do most people misunderstand about the field of architecture?
I think a lot of people, unless you're around it, think we just draw blueprints of floor plans. It's definitely a lot more complicated than that. And like I said before, there's so many avenues that you could go into, even with an architecture degree, whether it's on the technical side or on the design side. But what I would consider to be true architect, you really got to look at a project holistically, from not just from putting pencil on paper to construction, but even working with the client to make sure, are they looking at the right site? Are they thinking about growth in the future? What is their business plan to make sure that the building is going to meet their needs now and in the future? It's not just laying out a couple of rooms on a piece of paper and putting some windows in it. It's far more complicated. And even from that, working with our consultants and engineers, you kind of have to have a fairly hefty knowledge of the entire thing. So, we hire consultants and use their expertise all the time, but we have to know what they're saying to understand how to apply it to the building. So it is a lot of knowledge, a lot of education. I guess it's the constant learning in the profession as well, which I'm not sure people realize when they go to design. There's all kinds of programs out there now that you can get SketchUp, you can do free, you can do all kinds of design software and play with the home builder. And it seems like fun, but to go on and realize how much education you're constantly going to be doing, it's pretty hefty, and I think a lot more than what people realize.
And so when people are thinking about like their building, right, and you're getting into those initial conversations, and right, they have to use an architect, right? That's just it's the way that the building plans are. Do you find that when you're dealing with somebody that's getting into a project maybe for their first time, whether it's commercial or residential, and they're asking those questions, all right, well, here's the floor plan, here's what I want, right? They kind of have a little bit maybe of a picture in their mind. They're trying to get it to you that they can get how it's going to go. And then you bring on the education piece. What's your first step in trying that education and trying to get that level of understanding from the client on exactly what they want from that building?
Yeah, and of course this is different depending on every project we have, whether it's the smaller home builder like you're talking about or doing the large commercial projects. It gets tailored a little bit to the client, but we'll take a house as an example. For those, I usually will walk the client through the full process first to sit down and say, like, oftentimes we'll get calls and say, hey, I found these plans on monster.com and I just need you to draft them up for the building department. It's like, well, okay, let's step back a little bit. Does it fit on the site? What are the setbacks? What is the zoning? Are you in a wildland urban interface zone? Getting a lot of those setback questions to say, it's a little bit more involved than just downloading a plan and putting it on the site. So getting them to understand that, and then just the process moving forward. Even if you have a plan, it's probably not going to be perfect. I haven't found anyone that has come to us and said, hey, I have this plan. I found it in a book and this is what we're going to build. There's always something, a bigger window, a bigger closet, a bigger garage, turn it this way. There's going to be some design work involved. And as soon as you touch something, then obviously all the other parts are affected. So we have to make sure that they all work together. You haven't moved something structural. You haven't adjusted the building envelope so that you still comply with all of the energy codes. And then from there to go into the engineering side of things, sometimes we'll do our own framing engineering, but a lot of times we use a structural engineer to do the whole package for us, as well as mechanical systems too. So getting those guys involved in doing a cohesive package for the client. I'm not sure they realize how much engineers you can put into the project once they get them as well. But getting that to all work together before you even present the package to the building department. So it's definitely giving them that process education. And then even going through the construction too, we will help them oftentimes find a contractor that suits what they need. And then working with them to get things built in a timely fashion. But for the commercial side, typically those tend to be a bit more savvy when they're ready to build. They have partners, they have financial people that they have to talk to, so they tend to be a little bit more familiar with the process. But even then, you're still sitting down and it's like, okay, you want to build an office building. Well, you've got 12 people today, but how many are you going to have in 3 years? If you don't want to build a building for 2 years and have to move again. So just kind of getting that background information and walking them through what their goals are ultimately, that's probably what we're more focused on in the commercial world.
Yeah, do a fair bit of your clients show up and have those goals defined, or is that one of the processes that you feel that you have to go through quite regularly of fully defining the goals?
So I actually think it's a great exercise to do on every project, whether the client thinks they know what they want or not, just because it reestablishes in their minds what they're doing, and it sets clear expectations for the entire team to come through and say, like, hey, we want 10 offices and 3 conference rooms, and this is what we want. It's okay, but why are we doing this? Let's go back through and talk about the why. And then that oftentimes will bring up other questions like, oh, we forgot about this, or, we didn't think about the future this way, or we didn't realize that was a possibility. So I like to do that on every project, even, for example, the hospitality projects that we do. They're often a brand, and you are given a prototype. And if you stray from that, they tend to not be very happy with you. So, but to come back to the performer and say, okay, what's going to work for the site? How many rooms do you really need in order to make this profitable? If you're trying to get a unique location and get people to stay at this hotel versus another one, what can we do on the exterior or the lobby space to really make it a space that, as a client, we're going to want to come and stay there versus another location. So we definitely try to walk through that on every project, even if the client thinks they know what they want.
Yeah, and I can imagine like when they've got those, prototype drawings that they have, and you're trying to, like you mentioned before, like, right, fit in with the community, and you're like, well, hey, maybe we want the entrance to be over here versus here, just the way it reacts with that community involvement can be a challenge, right? Because you're trying to go against their prototype.
Yeah. It can, and yeah, but that's a big part of what we do. I really think the amount of time you put into that site planning and program planning, it absolutely makes the project a success in the end. It's well worth the time to sit down and do that.
Yeah, for sure. So when and how did you first become passionate about being an architect?
I'm not really sure. When I was younger, I knew what they were. I grew up in a very small town in Indiana. Obviously I knew there were buildings when people drew them, but I don't think I knew formally what the profession was or did. I did have a drafting class in high school, and the teacher there was very enthusiastic about drafting. Not necessarily architecture, but enthusiastic about drafting. And I'm not sure that that's hard to comprehend until you see it. But he just loved getting into the computer system and turning out plans. But it was interesting to me that he also said, you can use this. You don't have to draw floor plans. You could use it to draw art sculptures. You can use it to draw furniture. You could do anything with it. And then that kind of clicked. It's like, oh, this is just a tool. Like, this isn't a profession. This is a tool. So from that, and I realized, I can get art, science, and math all together in one career. That's really interesting to me because, I have a lot of avenues from there. I could take the career a couple of different ways if I wanted to, if something didn't feel right. Also from a family of engineers, so pretty familiar with at least the that side of things with mechanical and electrical engineering and chemical engineering in there too. But so that process and that work ethic was already there for me. But being able to bring that art piece to it and having a bit more ability to shape what I did was really the draw that had me go into the field.
Cool. So what do you wish you would have known when you first started in the industry?
Gosh, I think I wish I knew that there were a lot of options going in. Like I said, we just had this drafting class and the guy was great, but at that point in time, I thought that's what architects did. You drafted. So having the knowledge to say, you could come out of this and be a set designer for theater production, or you could go into, 3D, futuristic design and just do, quote, unreal buildings, build sets for movies in a computer. You could take it in, like I said, you could do sculpture design, you can do furniture design. You don't have to just do typical buildings. And like I said, where I grew up, it was a small town, and so things tended to look a little bit the same. But it could go anywhere. Really, that's what I wish I knew when I started. I think that would have made that learning curve in college go a little bit smoother.
With that, do you, looking at it, in college, thinking about the different avenues it could go, and the work you're doing today, how has that changed from, like, you mentioned, the technology today, and using, Revit or what have you, all the different programs that we have to create the set of plans, but there's still the thinking part of it that goes behind it. And, in designing a virtual world, virtual reality now that you can do walkthroughs on buildings. As you're moving forward, where do you think that'll take you in the next 10 years with the technology?
Yeah, we actually started college, most of my college career, we did still by hand on drafting boards. It was just the last 2 years that we started implementing CAD systems at that point in time. And then obviously as soon as we graduated, firms had already switched over to using some type of CAD program. So that was a fairly quick learning curve, but it's relatively easy to pick up. Moving into the BIM world with Revit, at least for me, just because I've had used AutoCAD for so many years, it looks probably a little bit slower than some of the younger architects out there. It's exciting to see how much that has changed and what we can do with it. We'll take that hospitality project again. We're able to now model a hotel room, put it into, we'll call it a group, and building that, we can create schedules, not just for ourselves to create construction drawings, but we can even use it for procurement packages for the furniture company to come back and say, you know what, I need 162 queen beds, I need 130 king beds, I need this many left refrigerators. It's this mixed ordering, and it really cuts down on the mistakes, I think, on the end in terms of materials and the equipment. I know some firms are doing more of a design build, and they'll even go down and figure out how many studs the building's going to need. They can create an entire construction package with the contractor. That's something that we are just starting to get into. On our side of the firm, there's a couple of contractors we're working with that really loves that capability to go in and not necessarily completely rely on the information that we're getting, but more as a back check or even a quick just numbers to be able to put together quick fee packages and with the ever-changing material costs and lead times on things, to be able to make decisions much, much faster on what they need to do and when they need to order. So that's been a really fun thing for us to learn in the firm moving forward. From there, I've got a couple of friends who are teaching some really exciting classes in architecture, and we're seeing AI become a part of the design process. And the things that they're able to plug in and generate with that. The creativity is just unbelievable what these guys are being able to produce. We were talking sort of about the movie sets in futuristic worlds before, to be able to generate something that you can see with your own eyes and then be able to say, okay, that's not real, it's not going to stand up, but the light is right and the scale is right and the feel is right, and to be able to take that and turn it into a real project is a really exciting thing where I think that the profession is going.
Yeah, that is cool. And in AI in the design process, that's a whole different thing, right? I mean, where's that going to go and what's that going to look like? And
exactly,
it's going to know before us what it's supposed to look like, maybe.
Yeah, it can.
In your work as an architect, how have you seen a building have an impact on its occupants?
Oh gosh, unfortunately, we've seen how awful they can be, and we've also seen how good they can be. With our nonprofit work, we have seen where people are living in really unsafe locations. It could be, we appreciate that someone is out there trying to do something, right? So I want to make sure that that's first and foremost. There are people out there trying to do something, but to take, even just an abandoned warehouse building just to get basic roof overhead shelter is not really what we would consider healthy living conditions. So that is not meant, that architecture is not really meant for that purpose. So being able to even help educate the clients on the nonprofit side and the work that we're doing there to say, codes are there for a reason. If we're going to give them a shelter, it needs to be warm, it needs to be insulated, it needs to be safe. We need to make sure that we want as many people here as possible, but we still need to be able to exit them in case of an emergency. So that's definitely kind of on the side where we're trying to actively improve architecture on that end. On the other side, there's some really beautiful spaces out there too. There's a number of amazing places that, even not necessarily in Europe, but even here in the country, you go to a number of the chapels or any of the just beautiful, we call them park structures that you can spend time in, just that really create that connection between indoors and outdoors. It's shelter for you to protect you, but it still kind of gives you that sense of peace when you're outside as well, when you have that connection. So I think buildings can definitely help people in that way to give them that personal protection, but still give them the connection to the outside. And obviously, we also have hospital buildings. As long as they're functional and they're being designed the correct way, then you're literally saving lives by having a functional building in that aspect as well. And for us, even the hospitality side, you're going to come back to a hotel that you felt comfortable in, that you were able to set the temperature correctly. You had good fresh air, you had good lighting, it had good access to places that you wanted to go, versus a motel out by the airport. It really can make a big difference on impacting where people live, work, and play.
Yeah, so following along with that, when speaking to building occupants, what do they tell you is important in their building? What's like the number one thing you always hear that's kind of like a common theme that you're like, all right, and does it change? Does that importance change from, year to year, or is it a trend thing, or what is it?
Yeah. So, obviously everyone that comes to us wants the most building for their dollar. And then again, that's where we step in with the education. Let's make the best building for the dollar. Yeah, everybody was like, we just want to absolutely maximize space. And that's, when I hear that, I think what they're trying to say is we need function. Absolutely, it has to work for us. There's no point in spending, construction's expensive these days, so there's no point in spending all of this money for something that's not going to ultimately work for us. And there's some now, especially, they want flexibility built in too. So, say you do have this office building and you have some conference rooms, there's going to be times when you want to sit down with one or two people to have a private conversation. There's going to be others where you want your whole team there, and there may even be some where you want the whole company there. So flexibility has been a really big part of where we've seen a shift in how we're designing, and that even comes down to the single family homes too, right? Everyone's now typically got at least a computer, if not a formal office, set up somewhere in their home to be able to remote in, and just giving them that space. But at the same time, if you do go back to the office, you don't want to take up a whole room in your house just to have an office computer in there. So that flexibility is a big one that we've seen people come to us, whether they know it or not. They're asking for flexibility.
Yeah, and we're doing a little tenant improvement for our new space, and flexibility in the space and having those sanctioned off areas where people can go and have private conversations, and just having a place for people to go, not sit at their desk, right? We have areas that we can move around, and the space is important to us, right? So that's one of the things when we decided this space, that flexibility was key for us. So that I agree that is something. I think that's something that's going to stay, right? Flexible spaces that can move the nano walls, right? How we can make a conference room grow or expand, open it all up if it need be, versus you're doing it all hands or what have you with people. We've seen that as well. So yeah, definitely this flexible spaces are. And I think there's enough materials out there to make it happen pretty easy.
Yeah. It's been, we have seen quite a few new things even come on the market with either materials or equipment, which is great that they are starting to respond to that market desire. So it's great to see all these new items coming out that can help meet those needs.
Yep. So what are you currently researching or has struck your curiosity?
Well, that's definitely going to be in the technology department for me. I'm still learning Revit. We're doing quite a bit, like I said, but the younger architects are much better at it than I am. And obviously trying to manage the firm and being in that at the same time is, I need to know enough of what it can do to help move things forward. But it's going to be constantly the technology of what software does the firm need to provide to make us the most effective that we can? What is out there? What are, especially our contractor clients, what are they asking for? How can we help them? I find it interesting. I think a lot of architecture firms get a little nervous about almost doing shop drawings and providing material takeoffs, but it's right there. Like, you've spent all this time doing all that work, it's right there. So I don't think I would sign off and say go purchase directly out of this, but to have it as that check and that conversation piece to make sure we're all doing what's right for the client just makes sense to me. More than that, we are starting to get into a lot more it's a good way to say it, more on the procurement side of things, I guess, which kind of ties back to that modeling and scheduling as well. Just helping our clients with not just the building side, but getting into a lot of the owner items as well, the service that we're starting to work on. So just researching the best way to do that and making sure that we know what materials and equipment are available for them as well.
Yeah, because with the supply chain stuff, right, that can be a big issue. You just can't get something on in time, and you're designing it one way and the space is supposed to function one way, but then they can't get a piece of furniture or what have you that's supposed to fit in there. It's like, what do you do, right? So that's it's a big issue. I haven't heard that one yet. That's interesting. That you design a space, but then it's like, yeah, well, we can't get that for 8 months. It's like, well, what do we can't open the building, or that's not going to fly with the client. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah. And that's exactly what's happened on a number of products. So we do that hospitality work. And so if you have a brand standard and these are your beds, these are your nightstands, these are your refrigerators, if they all came from one place and they were on a boat somewhere and that boat didn't make it, we've usually got 3 to 4 alternates sitting in our back pocket. And then even with those, a lot of times we're having to source other places and get variances in order to get the equipment that we need. So yeah, it definitely can hold up a project, which is kind of why having the schedule put together really helps us, because we can just then plug that in, make sure the dimensions fit, everything runs. It can update all the costs for us, as well as lead time. So being able to have that to get information quickly is really where we see our firm being a good service to our clients.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? You have 3 to 4 alternates, and that's not enough. So you may have, you got to build a library of up to 8 alternates, right? That you can plug and drop in there, and then whatever, what is the availability of all 8 of those? Yeah, that's just crazy. So did COVID shift the direction of the work that you do with buildings?
For our firm specifically, not too much, other than, like you said, kind of planning in more of those flex spaces into our projects. Lately, since we've been doing a lot of multifamily and hospitality, those projects, just due to their size, take a number of years, even just on the design side, let alone the construction side. So other than some, like I said, delays with equipment and furnishings showing up, even as long as as well as the financial piece of that, that got delayed a little bit too on a number of our projects, just because hotel occupancy rates went down to 20%. So the bank stopped providing lending to hotel projects. So we did see a number of those get put on hold for a little while, not completely banned, but at least put on hold until that market started to pick back up again, which of course meant that we kind of had to go along a little bit too for that ride, and slow down, and it wasn't quite as crazy pace. But other than that, for us, at least at the small firm, we're pretty flexible. We can go where we need to go. And with having the diverse background and project types, if the hospitality one slowed down, then a lot of the single family remodels picked up since people were home. So we're just able to shift. And that's one thing that we do, even just on the bigger ups and downs throughout the years. We're able to shift our market base depending to what they need.
And on the hospitality side, have you seen it kind of bounce back? I mean, the people are going, like the COVID thing was like, it happened and they're like, all right, it's over and we're moving on. We're moving back on projects that were maybe slowed down a bit or back roaring up, and new projects are coming online.
Yeah, and at least in this area in Colorado, absolutely. We're starting to see that. I think being a tourist-based state, people just love to come out here because they're trying to get to an area that has so many outdoor activities. So we've definitely seen that come back here. Across the nation, though, just with the partners that we work with, we get some information about hospitality across the nation. And then it's still pretty slow in a lot of areas. A lot of the larger conferences and business travel is still down. But the typical vacation and smaller conferences are definitely picking back up. So it's great to see, and I think it's getting close. I think we're getting close to being back to that business travel again, but maybe not quite there across the nation yet.
But the hospitality industry is still, it's recovered essentially from what you're seeing.
Yes, at least in this area, yes.
Yeah. What direction would you like to see your the architecture industry take in the next few years?
I would love to see a lot more craft brought back into architecture. We have all these great tools and 3D visualization and material options. But I think sometimes we get a little stuck in our own programs and our own tools. So even on the single family side, it can come back and just get into the details and get away from the kind of spec home stucco box. It would be nice to see that brought to all levels, not just the residential, but to come back and do trim details and really intentional planning. It's just so easy to build in the programs that we have. I think we need to step back and start asking ourselves a lot more why. Why is this space here? Why is this window here? What is happening with the light? Even on the material side of things, why why are 49 insulation in the house? Why not make it better? Like what could we do to make things better? So I'm hoping, and I think now that we have these amazing tools, the industry is really going to start to shift a little bit and bring that why back into the process.
And so using the technology will give you, right, it all comes down to fee and time and all that stuff. But, the technology, I listened to a podcast the other day, and, technology is supposed to make our lives better. We're only supposed to be working 20 hours a week, right? Yeah.
Right.
That hasn't happened. So, right, when we got all these amazing tools and it's like, can those tools allow us to do, like you were saying, more craft? Can we get into more of this, ask more of the why questions? Because the tools are giving us more time to do that versus just running to optimize the dollar output. I think that's an interesting question as we get into it. It's fee structure and about all just running to get something put up. So I think it's a good, hopefully technology will allow that to happen. So it's supposed to.
Yeah. We need the construction materials need to catch up with the technology on the design end, I think. And then that will really start to change. And people are testing things out and really trying to get there to come up with something new, to use, less natural materials so that we're not depleting forests and we're, not putting carcinogens into our materials and just making sure things are done with intention. I think this is going to eventually allow us to get there. And the construction side will catch up.
Yeah, I think there's always a lead lag, right? So there's, what's leading and what's lagging based upon it and what's pushing things to happen. The building codes are definitely getting a lot more strict. So I think there's a lot of room for innovation. I think the technology that we use, right, is we use some pretty fantastic tools in our designs, right? Mm-hmm. And in the industry, the guys are still out there in some ways with hammer and nails. So that technology gets translated more in the building industry. There's a lot of room for innovation, right? There's a lot more we can do, modular construction. There's just tons of different ways we can construct buildings, and just how that actually will translate in the future is going to be, I think that's exciting for the industry. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So if you had extra money on a project, how would you recommend a client use it?
And obviously it can depend on how much extra money they have, but always in better glazing, better windows, better light is probably where I would gear people to go, because that is a more expensive part of the building assembly. And anytime you can make a connection from the inside to the outside in a way that doesn't hurt the function is a good thing to do. It keeps people working a bit more efficiently. It keeps them happier while they are working. So I think anything that gives you that connection inside and outside is going to be where to go. And then also more durable finishes. So I touched a bit earlier about being on the Fire Board of Appeals, and through that we actually created an ignition resistant construction manual that's used for the wildland urban interface zones. It's adopted in a number of places across Colorado, definitely Colorado Springs, and even a number of areas across the country have adopted this manual to help make their materials stronger, so that during times of wildland fires, we don't see so many structure to structure fires happening. So you're always going to have forest fires, you're always going to have grass fires, accidents happen because there are people and there's lightning, and that's always going to happen. But to make our structures safer from the outside rather than just using the cheapest material available will really cut down on the loss and the damage that occurs during these massive fires. So that's definitely something that I'm passionate about and have been involved with quite a bit, and always educate my clients on the more durable exteriors. So you could be looking at, instead of using like a fiber siding, using a hardy or a cement board siding, or maybe even use a metal finish, or just anything that's going to be durable longer term. And a lot of times those even help them with their insurance costs too. If you meet that ignition resistant construction manual, there are a number of insurance companies that will come back and give you some relief on your insurance costs as well. So there's a multitude of reasons to do that, but absolutely, that's where I put my extra money into the finishes.
And do you see a huge multiplier on going with those more durable finishes? Is it a significant amount of money, or is it a minimal cost, 10%, or is it like a 50% multiplier?
You definitely have options to spend more. But yeah, I would say typically it's in the 5 to 10% range to actually meet that ignition resistant construction. But then long term, if you think about it, you may be spending 5 to 10% more now, but you don't have to repaint or restain every year, or you don't have rot happening after 5 to 8 years. So you're not replacing the entire siding. There's a lot of long-term payback to go with those. But yeah, I would say, if you come back and say, I'm going to use real stone from a quarry in Italy because it meets ignition resistance, sure, you're going to spend a lot of money. But yeah, there's definitely options to do it a very similar budget to what you would have not using those methods.
Well, and like you said, like if you balance the first cost versus the maintenance cost, there's a payback to it, right? It's going to,
yes.
And it's probably like 5 to 10%. And if you look at cost of painting and just general maintenance on an exterior of a structure, right? It's going to pay back. I mean, whether it's 10 years or whatever, there's a payback for that extra 5 to 10%. So it's not extravagant, like unless you're going with the Italian marble or what have you, right?
Exactly.
So, what's the one thing you wish every project would incorporate, but typically doesn't mainly due to budget? Is it the siding?
Yeah, that's probably a big one. And really just, I wish every project would start with an architect that would sit down and plan with them. That's really what we want to see. Get it right the first time, whether you use, a siding or a different material. If you get the planning right up front, it's going to be a successful project. It doesn't do you any good if you go and buy your house plans and put it on there, and then you're having to struggle just to get your car in the driveway every day.
Yeah, so I think this kind of follows along. What advice would you give someone just starting to consider building or purchasing a building?
Yeah, that's definitely find the design team that is best suited for your project. I would love to come out and say, every architect is going to be amazing, but we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So there's even times when I come back to a client and say, you know what, this isn't going to be a good fit for us. We're not going to be able to provide the best service for you. So here's a couple of suggestions of people who I think would really be good for you. And I hope as an industry, we're able to do that with each other. And it's not so, this is mine and competitive and must be better and must have all. I don't think, at least the ones that I work with here, they're all very friendly, and we're all trying to do the right thing for the community and for the client. So ask those questions of your design team and say, do you have experience doing this? Like, I would never design a hospital. That's just not going to be a thing I'm never going to do. I have no experience in it, and it's very specialized in something that's truly dealing with people's lives, life or death of people's lives. So that's not going to be something that I do. But we have people we would refer to if there is something that comes up like that. So just ask lots of questions about their background and the type of work that they do to make sure you've got the right team.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know kind of where your line is, right, and not take on too much, right? And I think even some architects have their, modern tradition. That there's even old world, right? There's all that different even aspects of that into what they like to design, right? And so there's that. Comes back to the art aspect of the architecture. It's like this is kind of what their medium is, and that suits them the best. I think there's even that plays into it.
Absolutely.
So, what's an example of a building or / design mistake or failure that you experienced, and what you learned from it?
Well, there's always lots, but which one can we actually talk about? We just talked about this hotel downtown that we just finished and recently opened. We had a pretty good mistake where the BIM and technology that we've been talking about comes into play. Obviously, we used Revit and did full 3D modeling of the building and put in our MEP systems and the structural systems. Everything was in there. It came down to a couple of areas where you couldn't get certain equipment already modeled, and it just does it make sense to take a heat pump and 3D model it ourselves just to put it in a couple of locations? It's a lot of time to do that. So A lot of times we'll just put a rectangle in there. We know where the location is. We know what it's doing. That's fine. We have a cooling tower on this particular project, and we got the cut sheets and dimensions from the manufacturer. We actually did go ahead and do a quick just box to model it up in 3D so we could see what it looked like. Designed a visual screen to put around the cooling tower and made sure all the airflows worked, got the platform on there. That piece of equipment became unavailable during COVID, so we had to switch to a different one. Seemed to have very close specs within, a few inches here and there of each other, so that was great. Got the next piece in. Again, it's back ordered, so most of the hotel got done. The equipment finally showed up about, I want to say 4 to 6 weeks before we were supposed to open. It was 12 feet taller than what we had thought it would be because of a platform that this one needed to go on for all the sound isolation. So as you can imagine, we had this piece modeled. We had moved windows for the hotel rooms to make sure they weren't looking at it. And then all of a sudden it's that much taller. We now have one poor hotel room on the 3rd floor. You look out the window, instead of seeing Pikes Peak, you see a cooling tower. So maybe if you're a mechanical engineer, that's kind of a cool room. But for most people, I think that was a pretty good mistake that we will not be making again.
Well, yeah, 2 different substitutions, right? And the third one actually was the one that went, that's, I feel you. It happens though, right? I mean, yeah. Anyways, so what is your favorite building and why?
So I'm actually going to give you 2. The first one's not a building. It's actually Park Güell in Barcelona by Antoni Gaudí. He did all kinds of amazing buildings throughout Spain. But that park, going up in architecture school and, seeing all of the styles out there, you see his work and it's just organic and floral, and there's bones and fruits and all kinds of stuff all over his architecture, right? And so the Sagrada Familia was always one of like, wow, that's really amazing. I've never seen anything like that. I want to go to Barcelona. Finally went, and it's absolutely an amazing, like you don't realize how large of a scale these things are. You see slides and pictures, it just does not translate. And that was beautiful space. The light is fantastic, but not far from there is Park Güell. And that space, because it's mimicking nature while in nature, has such a unique quality to it. And then the sound through the park is really amazing. So there may be a bird chirping somewhere, but it echoes across all of the stone walls that he's put in there, and it becomes amplified. While at the same time blocking noise from a very busy park in public. So you don't get a lot of the speech and people that you would, walking in a typical park like, Garden of the Gods, which also has a lot of amplification to it. It's just so well done with that organic piece tying the actual built, I'm going to call it shelter architecture versus building architecture, in the actual natural environment. It's a very comfortable, interesting space to be in. The other one on the other end of the probably architectural spectrum is Peter Zumthor's rest area at the Zinc Mine Museum in Norway. And that one, it's going to seem kind of silly. They're little pavilions along a road before you get to the mine. A couple of them have bathrooms in them. It's kind of why in the world would you love that little piece of architecture? But again, it's so well done. Material choices just blend into the forest. And it becomes something that as you're looking at it, like it feels like it's part of the forest, but just all of a sudden becomes a hard line instead of the organic line. And his use of material and scale, I think he does better than most. And so those are probably my 2 favorite, at least until somebody else does something amazing too.
Well, yeah, I mean, in those spaces, I don't know when the Zinc Mine Museum, when that one was built, but what was going on in Barcelona. I forget that architect. I can't say his name right, so I'm not going to Gaudi. I'm not going to butcher it. So anyways, his stuff's just amazing, right? And it, like I said, it's all over Barcelona. It's just amazing stuff. You just can't walk around without going out, looking at all this amazing architecture, right? So from an architecture standpoint, it's just gorgeous. I don't know if the public at the moment has the will to build those type of structures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you think about the cost and just the sacrifices it takes to make some of those structures. Today, I just don't know if we're ready to do that again. We need it, like you said, it needs to evolve a little bit. The technology needs to help us so we can do that type of stuff. So where is your favorite place and why?
So that's definitely for a built place. Barcelona is going to be one of my favorite places. Their appreciation of architects and architecture. There's a lot of places in Europe that do that, but that one particularly, they really have a grasp of it. And to walk through a city where I don't even have to talk to anyone, I can tell that they appreciate what I do is really fantastic. Of course, my other favorite place is on the couch, curled up with the family watching movies. So we get a little bit of both. It just depends on what we're doing. Those two for sure.
So what's the biggest lesson you learned in the past year about creating better buildings?
It always takes an intentional effort. You're going to have clients constantly that come in and just say, they don't care about the capital A architecture, or they don't care if you have this process. They don't care what software that you use. They just want it done for the cheapest dollar to meet their needs. So the biggest lesson for us is continually be educating ourselves, not only on our craft and what we're doing, but be educating our clients in the community as well. So refocusing and making sure that we've always got that in the back of our minds, is that we're doing this for a reason, and that gives us that motivation to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and so for someone listening and they would like to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Sure. You can go to 308llc.com, and it's got all of our contact information there. You're welcome to shoot me an email anytime. It's Christy Riggs with CHRISTYRIGGS at 308llc.com. Our phone number's on the website too if you want to give us a call. Pretty easy. My office does get forwarded to my cell phone if it's after hours. We may or may not pick up, but it does get forwarded, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of us. And always happy to talk to anybody, whether it's an architectural question or I have a child who's interested in going into architecture. Any of those, we're happy to talk to people.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for participating. It was being a guest on the podcast. We really enjoyed the conversation. For me, I took away, always start with a design team, architect early, right? I mean, that's what we always like to see, is people to get the designers involved as early as possible. When we're doing a building, it's got to be based upon the community and make sure it's going to fit. I think that comes all the way down to, like you were talking about, the material selections in a wildland fire area, right? We got to make sure that the buildings that we're building, I mean, even here in Golden, right, we have the Marshall Fire, which is not a wildland fire, but the structures, you can look at it and see one structure burned down and the other one didn't. And you can see there's differences, there's could be different construction types that made it all happen. So it does matter what we put on the exterior of a building. And the material, I mean, it's not that much more expensive when you do a life cycle cost analysis. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you do this, right?
Right.
Right. Don't be afraid of the first cost. Look at the long-term cost. And then it's just right. Don't go for the most building for the dollar versus the best building, and make sure there's flexibility into that. So, and let's add craft. Hopefully this technology can bring craft back into the industry, right? I mean, that's important too. And materials helps us with all that as we go along further. So yeah, that was great. And I want to thank the listeners for listening to the podcast. Sign us up on, subscribe, check us out on the website, dma-eng.com. Check out Christy, what she's doing on her website. I know you have a Facebook page as well. There's some good stuff going on your Facebook page, so check all that out. And again, thanks everybody for being for Christy being a guest, and everybody listening to the podcast.
Thank you so much.